Well, welcome back again this week to an analysis behind the news. Just got back from Washington, D.C., where I was talking to a number of aides for congressmen and that sort of thing on the free trade deal, and realized that unless they understand that there is a conspiracy to arrest the sovereignty of the United States and destroy the independence of the American people, they're falling for these so-called free trade deals. Won't get into the particulars, but it's the same thing with immigration. Unless you understand there's a conspiracy to break down the moral and social fiber of the various countries involved in taking in these refugees, you don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. They're too stupid is your answer to what they're doing. No, they're not stupid. There is a design to what they're doing. We all get these pictures, these heartstring tugging pictures of little kids and that sort of thing. But as we pointed out, in many of these locations in the European Union, these are very virile men. A lot of thousands of them, thousands of these virile men that they don't look like they've ever missed a meal. They're all buff, so on and so forth, but they always go after the little family, the little kids, the dead boy on the Turkish beach, that sort of thing, to tug at people's heartstring to let these others in that are never vetted. You know, we've been looking at this a long time, and it's becoming a serious problem in the European Union, but it's been going on for decades. It's been going on for decades in the United States as well, which we will show in a moment. But here out of the Wall Street Journal is refugee fight widens EU rift. And it says the European Union pushing through a plan that forces member states to take in migrants. Now, last week there was an article in the Financial Times. And it basically said to Greece, look, we'll take care of your refugee problem for you as long as you give us control over your borders. If Greece would do that, you see, they would no longer have a country. A country without borders is no longer a country, or a country that cannot control its borders. And yet the very next day, they took away that ability from every member of the EU to have this refugee resettlement scheme. And not just Greece. But it's interesting when you read some of these newspapers that most of you never read, like the Financial Times. It says some very interesting things. And, you know, I always look at 4 or 5 newspapers a day sometimes to get the real news. For instance, it says in here that the resettlement of these refugees will be only those that have come into Greece and into Italy. Now, this is 160,000 of just those that are in Greece and Italy. It doesn't count those in Austria, it doesn't count those in Croatia, doesn't count those in Hungary, and that kind of thing. So this is only a certain segment of these resettlements. It's only a portion of the problem that's getting the headlines. The rest of it is apparently being ignored, and they keep coming in. The other thing is, too, for instance, here's one out of the Washington Post. And the Washington Post always tells the truth, right? Anyway, they say the proponents of the plan acknowledged Tuesday that it was just the first step to address the much bigger crisis, according to the UN Refugee Agency. And that more than 477,000 people had arrived. So they're resettling this 160,000, but they acknowledge nearly 500,000. Then in addition to that, they say Germany's National Railway Company announced Tuesday that it was suspending railway service to Austria because the trains have been overwhelmed with refugees. Perhaps you've seen some of these shots where they're actually pushing people in through the windows to pack these trains with refugees who don't pay. And so I pity the poor people sitting in the seats. They paid for their ticket, and all of a sudden these kids are being tossed through the window at them. That sort of thing. Maybe some of you have seen those pictures. Despite Hungary's opposition of the asylum seekers, a government spokesman said Tuesday that his country would abide by the rules, by the plan. So in other words, it doesn't matter whether they're for it or against it, they'll abide by this. This is a compulsory decision, and we are going to respect it. So in other words, the EU has come down and made it mandatory for all these countries to bring in these refugees. So much for sovereignty, so much for controlling your borders, so much for independence. It's gone in the European Union. And this is the entity that politicians in Washington, D.C. and Obama want us to get involved and integrate with them into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And, the Transatlantic Partnership. Trans-Pacific Partnership is where they want us to do the same with China, with that as the first step. That's another story. They say that that when you are in Vienna, you can go anywhere, according to a refugee from Aleppo, Syria. So in other words, they're told, or that's the word on the street, if you can just get to Vienna, Austria, from there you can go anywhere. And that's part of the problem. I just got home from Vienna a couple of weeks ago, and believe me, the Muslim garb, the Muslim people are all over the place. Whole neighborhoods are nothing but Muslims. You know, and now they want the United States to bring some of these in. And you can go to all the government websites and find out the requirements they have and the benefits these people will get when they get here. Now, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, these benefits that they say officially online are not quite accurate. They're bad enough, but they don't go quite as far as the reality of the situation, which I'll get into in just a moment. Here, for instance, and this is nothing new now. Keep in mind, we've already said this is nothing new. Here is something from 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. Obama administration considering resettling Syrian refugees in the United States. And these are the states where they may go. And it's an article about that. Now, the interesting thing is, it says the State Department is ready to reconsider the idea, an official from the department said of the administration, if the administration receives a formal request from the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees. Now, this is the problem that most people kind of gloss over when they read these articles. These refugee programs are actually overseen by the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees. They're the ones who decide who are eligible for inclusion into your country. Now, just as an idea, Antonio Gutierrez is the past president of the Socialist International and a hardcore Marxist. He is the head of the United Nations High Commission on Refugees. This is the guy we're going to trust? Guess who the main man in the United States that works with these people are? It's Anthony Lake, who the John Birch Society stopped from being named the head of the CIA because of his communist Marxist background. And he's the American that's going to be doing this. We don't vet these people at all. We are getting these people from the United Nations. And this article is 2 years old. But we've been looking at this for a long time, my file alone on it. And you can go through decade after decade, year after year. Here's one out of Parade magazine, from the Middle East to the Midwest. And it shows, it's an article about people coming in, these Muslims from these war-torn places, not being vetted. We have no idea of who they are. Here's another one, and this one was U.S. to help resettle more Syrian refugees. And this was a year ago. So this is not something new, ladies and gentlemen. We're just now beginning to see what's going on. And it's not just Syria. It's not just Iraq. It's not just Iran and Afghanistan and everything else. I'm getting too excited here. But you get this like out of the Times Digest, the New York Times, of over 2 years ago. It's an article on Mexican villages that have been cleaned out because they've all come into the United States. And you know that these Mexican villages used to be vibrant places full of people. They're half deserted, some of them now, because they came north. So this immigration problem is much bigger than people realize. We are allowing people to come into our country that we have no idea of their backgrounds, from war-torn areas, simply because they lost. Keep that in mind. You know, not all of the guys that lose are good guys. If this rebel beats that rebel, or this communist beats that communist, whatever, we bring them on into the United States. It is nuts. But it is only nuts if you think it's stupidity. It is design. These things are designed to break down the American society. And it's high time we force Congress to finally get some guts and stand up and do something about it. Until next week, we'll see you then.